Well, welcome everyone to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me as always, my winger rookie Squid vibes. Squid, I know we discussed it last week, but nice ceremony last night for JT for his 1,000th point the week prior.
Absolutely, and well deserved. When you get 1,000 points in the best league in the world over 15 years, that's pretty impressive. And for him to have his family there, his kids, everybody, it was like that is probably one of the best moments you would have as a hockey player. Being honored for something like that.
Yeah, and again, it must have brought. I mean, for you and your family, you Joyce and even Justin, like thinking back in those days, traveling around the old rinks and sitting up in those old barns when the kids were, again, as we mentioned last week, did you ever think then, 20 years later, all of a sudden you're sitting there watching him get his kids getting presented with, sticks, commemorating an event what his dad just did.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when they're that young, you're not really thinking about that. But obviously when he went to play junior and became, a pretty big star in the OHL and everything, then you think, okay, well, you know what, he's going to have a great career. He's a good player, but you're not thinking, okay, he's going to get 1,000 points. He's going to play 20 years or whatever. You're not thinking those things even when they get drafted. So, it's one of those things that, obviously he proved that, over time that he's a heck of a player and, get 1,000 points. I mean, what did they say? There was only 98 or 78
98
players,
yep.
98 players in the NHL history have 1,000 points. That's a pretty exclusive club to be in.
Well, especially when you got what now, almost like, what is it, like 700 plus players playing every year. And, I know a lot of them played the same end, but it's quite a few players have gone through that league over the years. That it is quite an accomplishment. Well, him being a superstitious type, he got kept off the score sheet last night, broke his streak, probably because he had to do that pregame ceremonies. They were probably a little concerned. But what did you think of the game overall? It started out a little bit sloppy, almost like a playoff version of a game, both teams filling them up. But I thought it got better as the game progressed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they played bad because they didn't really play that bad. I mean, obviously, 3 Ranger goals went in off of Leaf players, and it's a 5-2 game or 5-3 game?
5-2.
So, I mean, you think about that, and you take those 3 goals away, and all of a sudden it's a 2-2 game. I felt bad for Martin Jones, to be quite honest with you. I thought he's played extremely well. And the game was going good for him, and then all of a sudden, boom, 3 bad bounces, and the game was over pretty much. And then the empty netter, and the power play goal, that 4th goal, that hurt them quite a bit.
Yeah,
and and they've got a good power play, so you got to stay out of the box if you're going to beat them.
Well, I mean, that is one of the better teams in the league. But one of the things that I found interesting, I was at the game last night, but one of the things I found particularly interesting was, and you and I discussed this off the air, was how the Toronto D were so aggressive on the rush, and they normally are. And I know they have a habit of doing that, but last night they seemed almost like it was a premeditated plan they had to jump on the Ranger D, trying to create a lot of 2-on-1s. And the forwards, the centermen were moving back into the slot and just waiting for the channel to open to get themselves open like Matthews did on the second goal with McCabe, and of course Riley on the 2-on-1, and the other one passed it from the corner. But it just seemed to me that they were well prepared going into that game last night with the Rangers, and if not for a few errant passes, the outcome could have been much better. So I was encouraged by what I saw and how the team played.
Yeah, I mean, they were pinching pretty hard, and they were going down pretty low along the wall, keeping pucks in, and I thought they did a pretty good job of doing that. I mean, they kind of screwed the Rangers up in their own zone a lot. But then, the one thing I noticed as well was they backed off their own blue line quite a bit when the Rangers were coming at them, and they gave them a lot of room to enter the zone and make things happen. So, I mean, on one end, they did a really good job of pinching and having the centerman cover up for them and that sort of thing. But on the other side, they got to kind of stand up a little bit and make them go to the outside and finish them off and that sort of thing. You can't back off 15 feet inside the blue line and expect that you're going to be able to stop these guys in this
Well, I
league.
thought also that they did a better job of keeping the off winger or the off forward in the Rangers covered in their own end. They weren't so blatantly as open as they were last week in New York when they got that lead, and all of a sudden there was Rangers open all over there. So they did a better job of tightening things up defensively in their own end last night. So I was encouraged by that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they did a better job in their own zone, and you know what? You got to give those young kids that are filling in a lot of credit. Liljegren was back, obviously, so that made a difference. But those guys that are filling in, Timmins and Benoit and Lagesson and those guys, like, you got to give them credit, man. they're playing pretty solid, really, for the amount of ability they have or whatever, and give them a lot of credit because they've been thrown into the fire and they haven't got burned.
Well, that's encouraging. But the other encouraging aspect I like, Squid, was the Toronto forwards hard on the puck last night and generating a heavy game led by, which is uncharacteristic of Toronto teams we've seen in the past, led by Matthew Knies, Kelly Enrock, Noah Gregor, and even Tyler Bertuzzi looked a little better last night in that regard. Bottom line, as in all cases in all sports, and sometimes the numbers do lie, as they said, and in this case, the score really wasn't indicative of the game, and we've said it a couple times now. But again, you got to like the way these kids are stepping up now, and especially somebody like Gregor, who they got on the PTO. It seems like the bargain of the year so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can he skate? I got to tell you, he is fast, and he gets in there on the forecheck and makes some things happen. Knies was doing the same thing last night. I mean, everybody has to do it, though. That's the thing. Like, there's certain guys that are doing it. There's certain guys that aren't doing it. And, if everybody's not going to buy into playing that same type of hockey, then, your mistakes are going to happen and, things are going to open up somehow.
Well, you know that as well as I do. If the big guys aren't performing and carrying the load like they're supposed to, none of this matters because it's not going to make any difference because they have to be a factor. So you have to assume that that's going to happen. Hopefully.
Well, yeah. I mean,
hopefully.
Certainly hope so because I mean, yeah, the big guy, and I'll be honest with you, the big guys have played their part this year. I mean, when you look at the top four paid guys, they have done everything that has been asked of them this year so far, and they're getting a little contribution from some of the guys on the third and fourth line, like Gregor and Yarncroke, and those guys are playing exceptionally well. Matthew Knies has stepped in and played excellent on that first line. So, I mean, but there's still some holes to fill there.
Oh, no question. One of the holes,
as we know, and
oh yeah. Well, one of the holes we're concerned about was in goal, and Marty Jones, as you touched on at the beginning of this, was look good again. Would you go with him tomorrow night in Buffalo?
Absolutely. I mean, Samsonov has not played very well. I mean, he's had several bad games in a row. I'd go with Jones. I think he's calm in the net. He's playing very, very well. I mean, he got 3 bad bounces last night.
Exactly.
I mean, the game could have been a different game, but before that he was playing exceptional. I mean, his save percentage is like around 940 or something. I mean, that's pretty damn good. So, I mean, I would go back with him. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't you? I mean, Samsonov hasn't proved to me that, he can go out and play that well.
Yeah, I know we're going to need him at some point down the road, but these are 2 must-win type games. and you've got to go. I mean, you
Yeah.
field your best every night, but there are certain times where you got to let the other goalie play. But I'd say in a situation like this with the Christmas break coming, I go with Jones in both games.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. I mean, it's not going to be an easy game. They're going into Buffalo, a team that just got blown out 9-4, I think it
Oh,
was,
jeez.
and a lot of pressure on their coach, Granato, and all these types of things going on. So damn well it's not going to be an easy game. So you may as well put the guy in with a lot of experience and a guy that is calm in the goal and knows what to do in games like that.
Well, speaking of which, let's get right into that. Tomorrow, as you've just touched on, they head down to QEW to play their absolute nemesis and the Buffalo Sabres. They owned an overall winning record against Maple Leafs since they've come into the league, led by Punch Imlach, who left the Leafs, in a very poor way after getting gassed at the end of the playoffs, being beaten by Boston. They own an impressive 73-34-6 home record against the Leafs. My goodness. I mean, can you explain why that is?
Wow.
You were there.
I never knew it was that good.
Oh yeah.
You know what? It's it's a rivalry. It's like it's like the Battle of Ontario when they play Ottawa. It's no different. It's the battle of the QEW battle, or whatever you want to call it. And Buffalo, like I said, they feel that probably that people look down on them compared to Toronto.
Yeah.
So they want to prove something, and and then especially coming off that bad loss last night, they got even more to prove. So this isn't going to be an easy one, that's for damn sure.
Well, it's the David and Goliath situation or syndrome, if you want to call it. I mean, you played there. Was there a buzz in the room when you guys played the Leafs, either home or away? And of course, your motivation to be evident after playing in Toronto. But did you sense it any different throughout the rest of the room on those game days?
Oh yeah, no question. It was different for me because I played there, so I don't know. And I always took every game like it was just another game. You got to go out and do your job and do what you're supposed to do. But a lot of the other guys felt a lot different. And I think it was because, back in my day in Toronto, all we kept hearing about was the fires in Buffalo and all the crap that was going on and how shitty Buffalo was and everything. It was really bad what you would see on television about the city of Buffalo. So, I think they kind of looked at that and said, like, we're not getting the due that we deserve here in Buffalo. And when they played Toronto, they got that on their mind. There's no question.
Well, I know when other teams are coming, you played in Chicago also, so the original six rivalry would have been obviously very evident and prevalent in the room. But the significance for players coming back to play Hockey Night in Canada at Maple Leaf Gardens back in the day, it'd be a Super Bowl type of environment for them, for any player with their friends and family and just all the hoopla going around and going across the country, all that stuff. But it just seems that the Sabres, it's just got that little different sort of buzz and feel to it. They've broken our hearts as Leaf fans. It's almost like the Bills playing Buffalo, or the Miami Dolphins. They can lose every game of the year except the two to Miami. And if they win those two, the city's happy.
Yeah, it's kind of, it is. And they play them 5 times, I think, or 6.
The Sabres?
In the regular season, I believe.
Yeah, it's whatever the number is, 5 or 6. I don't know off the top of my head, but.
And those are big games. Those are big games for Buffalo. They got something to prove every time they play Toronto, and they don't want to come out on the bottom end. And that's just, and the fans get into it. And also you have like about a third or 4 or almost half the rink are Leaf fans down there.
Yeah.
And that probably pisses them off even more, so the players. So they figure, well, let's show them what we're made of here. And like I said, after coming off that loss last night and reading about all the heat on Granato and everything else, I have to think that they're going to come out probably even harder than they normally do.
Well, and the fourth coach to get the bullet this week, and DJ Smith. It's open season on
Yeah.
coaches. It looks like so. There's an extra motivation, and as Buffalo fans, we're always very want to say they love nothing better than sending us home very disappointed back across the bridge. And even with the belly full of the anchor bar wings, that's still not enough to appease the pain from losing once again, usually in heartache fashion to the Sabres. So hopefully tomorrow night the boys can bring it to a different level.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to have to because Buffalo are not going to lay down. You know that. I mean, and like I said, coming off that game last night, they got something to prove. They got something to prove for their coach, for the fans, and obviously it's Toronto, so there's an extra. Throw a little extra in there.
Well, we'll certainly see. Now we've discussed some of the players so far, but now we got to give kudos again to Jake McCabe, who again you and I have been hard on in the past. But I suggest he keeps keeping his game simple, and he seems to probably get a little bit better every game. And he made a terrific play to Matthews last night in the second goal. Mm-hmm. He's using the body the right way. He's not trying to put everybody up in the third row of the seats. So he's playing smart, controlled hockey, and the Leafs need that going down the road. So that's very impressive to see. So he's rounding into form nice, and we hope he keeps it going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, keeping everything simple, I think, for their whole defense core is probably the best way to get them out there and doing the job properly. Keep it simple. If you don't have a play, get it off the glass or throw it off the board. Just get it out of the zone and get up on the play and don't leave the other team a lot of room to attack you and back you off. And I think they've been doing a pretty good job of it lately. And I mean, they had that, 9-game point streak.
Yeah.
They got points in 9 straight games, and the Rangers ruined that last night. But, they just got to take that same mentality into Buffalo and say, hey, we can't run and gun against these guys. We just got to play it simple, play smart. And if they do that, I think they'll come out of there with 2 points, and they'll feel pretty good about it.
Well, it's good. I'd be remiss if I didn't sort of touch on last Thursday's debacle a week ago tomorrow with the Columbus with the 5-0 deficit going into the third period. And for 19 minutes, they turn it on. Have you in your career, have you ever been a part of anything like that?
Yep.
Maybe under the way. Maybe you were on the Columbus side, but then you lose at the end.
Yeah, there was a couple of times we blew big leads, and then there was one time I think we were down, I believe it was 5-2 to Edmonton after 2 periods. We came back and won 6-5. So that was a pretty big one for us in Toronto back then, playing against the Oilers and how powerful they were back then. And, we were down 5-2 and came back in the third to win it. Now, we had a couple of leads on Edmonton a few times, and they came back and buried us. So, so I guess it was nice that we were able to do that to them once anyway.
Well, one that just comes to mind, I can't remember, it was a 5 or 6 goal lead the Leafs had going in the third period against Washington one night. And this was in the Air Canada Center first open. And Mike Eastwood got a breakaway for the Leafs and hit the crossbar. And when he came back to the bench, everybody was kind of laughing because, the game is big and the Leafs lost in overtime. So,
yeah, I mean,
never say never.
No.
Well,
you're absolutely right.
Squid, the whole thing we've been talking about here with this Leafs is, the old cliche about down 5, at the game of inches and all that stuff we've always talked about. And it's how you move forward that counts. Resilience is the word. So that's sort of the theme of today's quote that I want to leave with you guys and the listeners, and we were going to focus on the resilience because when faced with a challenge, there's nothing scarier than not knowing. And because we know that the Leafs are the only team in NHL, so it seems they'll only be judged on what they do postseason. I think this is a very noteworthy quote.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
It's your reaction to adversity, not the adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop.
Mm,
You got to think
yeah,
about that one.
yeah, I did have to think about that
It's your reaction to
one.
adversity, not the adversity
Yeah,
itself, that determines your life story, how your life story will develop.
well, I probably would have to agree very strongly with that. Um, people deal with it in different ways. Um, but I mean,
Hard work.
you look at that game against Columbus, and you're down 5-0 going into the third period. You come back to tie it. You end up losing in overtime, but you got that point. And who would have thought that that was going to happen? I mean, I don't think anybody did.
No.
That they were going to score 5 goals in the third period. So, there was adversity that they overcame there, and hopefully they use that as a measuring stick in the future, because there's going to be more adversity.
Oh, no question.
It's a long season. And there's going to be more adversity, and they got to lean on things like that.
And just like the Buffalo Bills, they can never make it easy for us. Cheering for those teams,
No.
okay? So there's going to be some heartache or something down the road. So we're going to have to be prepared. So, folks, that's all we have for you today. I want to thank you all for listening. Like and subscribe us. Go to Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Band. We will be bringing some new podcasts in the new year. We're just getting when we get our schedules all set up, and it's been a very busy first half for us. But in the meantime, check out our library of shows from last few years. These stories have no shelf life from these guys, as Squid can attest to. He's still seeing all the Legends guys, and they all remind him about some of the stories they've told and ones they've heard on our show. So we'll be back to you all next week. But in the meantime, Merry Christmas to all, and hopefully a happy Leafs New Year.
Yeah.
Well, how about that send out, Squid? You like that?
I think that was perfect, Santa Claus.
Oh, boy, that's perfect. All right, folks. Onward and upward.